What I am talking about is the agenda where Israel can do no right, and the agenda by which the Jews, this kind of collective category, the Jews are to blame. They're to blame in Israel, but they're to blame in the United States. They control our institutions, they control our banks. This is a little bit of a problematic way to think. Why? First of all, because in many cases it's flat out false. And even in areas where it's not false, the question then becomes, well, if let's just say, for example, the Jews control the banks. Is that because Jews have somehow, how did Jews get control of the banks? Well, the answer to that's complicated. It goes back to the Middle Ages, where a lot of Christians, for example, stayed out of the banking industry. Usury was forbidden in many Christian kingdoms. And so basically the Christians told the Jews, you do that. You go into these so-called low professions, which involve lending at interest. And so the Jews went into those professions because they were forbidden from other professions. They were pushed into these areas. All right, they developed a proficiency in them. So this is how the Jews got where they are. So even if it's true, it hardly suggests anything other than that a combination of historical and cultural factors, not to mention Jewish success at making these companies run profitably and successfully. So the broader point I'm getting at is you've got a lot of young people, I think, in this country now, and they are deeply alienated. They're alienated from, well, pretty much everything. They're alienated from their own families, in part because they've grown up in dysfunctional family structures. They're alienated from their community because there is no community. They live in towns where the old civic structures have broken down. There's nothing really resembling the old bowling leagues and little leagues and town meetings and get-togethers and potlucks, and all of that is kind of gone. So they're living, in a sense, in a certain type of desert, if you know what I mean. They are very often disconnected from the church. They have problems with religion, as they might say, organized religion. They don't really trust the church or their pastor. And maybe their pastor is disconnected from the world also and doesn't actually preach about anything that has to do with their lives. And so they feel like they're in a Sunday bubble, and then they step out of it and it's unconnected with their ordinary life. And then they feel economically debilitated. They feel like, I don't have the same American dream as my parents. I don't have the same prospects. I've been saddled with these student loans that somebody kind of talked me into, and I didn't really pay attention, just signed on the dotted line. Now I owe like $184,000, and how am I expected to pay it back? And I can't find a job. So these are real concerns, and these are real issues. I will add to this the fact that a lot of these young people believe that institutions have been lying to them. The CDC lied to them during COVID. So did the NIH, people like Dr. Fauci. So did the FBI. So did the Border Patrol. So many of our institutions have discredited themselves, the medical establishment, the food industry. And so these young people feel like, I can't believe anything. So many things that were dubbed to be conspiratorial have come to be true. Therefore, conspiracy theories in general are more likely to be true than not true. And therefore, when somebody comes along and tells me the Mossad killed Charlie Kirk, well, could be true. I might as well give that the same credibility as the FBI telling me that this guy Tyler Robinson did it. How do I know that the FBI isn't lying to me again? So what we have is a breakdown of institutional trust. I also think we have seen a breakdown of critical faculties. By critical faculties, I mean the simple ability to be able to tell when an argument is valid, when something really makes sense, and when something is like downright absurd, when something is so unlikely as to be safely dismissible as a reasonable prospect. Now, I don't blame these young people, to be honest. A lot of them are actually, and some of them are on my social media. Dinesh, we used to watch your movies. You've now proven to be like a shill for Israel. And I'm like, I would like to engage these people, but the moment I try to do, they will post something like $7,000, like as if to say, I'm doing this, I've made this entire film costing millions of dollars to get like a check for $7,000 from like Israel. Absolutely ludicrous. So how do you argue with these people? Well, at the end, I don't. I want to engage them. I want to educate them in any way that I can. But the real blame here, I think, doesn't fall with the young people. It falls with the people who know better. It kind of falls with the Pied Pipers on the right. And these are people, by and large, who know better. These are people who actually know that, no, a Mossad guy didn't crawl out of a pipe and shoot Charlie Kirk. These are people who actually recognize that there's a lot of Muslim money in this country that is funding not only the left, but now also institutions that you would consider right of center. And all you have to do is, all these nonprofits, their annual statements are public, and their annual statements list who's endowing their chairs, who's hiring their professors, who's making large donations. Israel may be trying to do its small-scale social media campaign, but it's one thing to try to pay some Instagram influencer or TikTok influencer. It's another thing to own the political science department of like Tufts University or Tulane or Yale. So the Muslim strategy is to go after captivity of these institutions. And again, this is known by the Pied Pipers on the right. So you have to blame the leaders. Just like in the universities, I don't blame the kids primarily. Who indoctrinated them? Their professors, the deans, the administrators who created this engine of indoctrination that we call the university. And the same is true on the MAGA right. It's not the recipients of the propaganda, it's the Pied Pipers of the propaganda themselves. I think they bear the lion's share of the responsibility. When I first came to America around 1980, I had $500 in my pocket. Now, imagine if I'd been frugal, not spent a penny of that money, what would it be worth today? What could it actually buy now compared to what it could buy in 1980? Answer, less than $130. Now, why is that? Because the US government, through the Fed, is constantly printing money. Now, when the government prints money, there's more money chasing the same amount of goods and services, so money goes down in value. Money buys less. The Fed has been at it since 1913. That's why a dollar today can only buy what a few cents could buy in 1913. And the government continues to print oceans of money. It never stops. An ounce of gold reached a high of $850 in 1980. It's worth around $3,900 an ounce today. So historically, over time, gold has gone up and up in value, and dollars have gone down and down. And what about in the last 12 months? Well, gold is up over 40%. So I believe now is the time to find out how you can diversify your savings with gold and silver. And that's why I've partnered with Goldco. They offer the best customer service for precious metals ownership. They are also the only gold dealer that offers a first-time gold buyer rebate of up to 10% in bonus silver on qualified purchases. There's no better offer out there. To learn more about how to safeguard your savings from the dollar's decline, check it out. Visit Dinesh Gold, one word, dineshgold.com. That's dineshgold.com.